Yeah.
Why does alimony exist?
That's a great question.
Yeah. I get child support.
Yeah.
I get
splitting of assets.
I get that.
You ever want to
real quick.
want to take a feminism out of a woman?
Yeah.
Make her pay alimony.
Dude, I think one of the coolest things in the White Lotus episode, they have these 3 different girls that make up this girl group. It's phenomenal, and each is an archetype of a woman at their own age. But one of them is paying child support or alimony. But it is really interesting to see her reaction to it and how her friends react.
They hate it.
Yes. Okay, so can you explain, 1, what is alimony? And 2, what is like the steelman argument for it? Like, give me the, not like, oh, this sucks, but what is the best case scenario?
Yeah,
and why is it
so
important?
alimony or spousal support or spousal maintenance, every state calls it something different, is a payment that's made from one former spouse to another, and it's intended to either rehabilitate their earning capacity so that they can kind of get on their feet, or it's to roughly approximate the marital lifestyle for a certain period of time. So it's very rarely what we call non-durational, meaning like you broke it, you bought it forever, you owe her the marital lifestyle. There was a time where that was the way it was done, but it hasn't been that way for many, many years now.
So just so I can clarify to anybody who's listening, essentially there's this idea where if you're married and you have a certain lifestyle.
Right. And there's a wide disparity in your incomes.
And there's a wide disparity in your potential income because the wife might not even be working.
Correct.
It is up to the husband or the wife, whoever is the breadwinner, to maintain that lifestyle outside of the marriage.
Or some approximation of it for some period of time.
Got it.
So the steelman argument for it is the following. There are economic decisions you make during your marriage, and you make them as a couple, right? So it is very difficult for everybody to be Beyonce. Somebody's got to be Destiny's Child.
Absolutely.
You know, you can't all be the, Lionel Richie. Somebody's got to be the Commodores.
Sure.
So what you do is you say, okay, look, you're the star right now. I'm going to stand back. I'm going to take care of home. I'm going to do my thing. In the law, we call it diminished lifetime earning capacity, which basically means if a woman takes her late 20s or her 30s off from the workforce, because that's when you have kids. You have 100%. Kids in your 30s, kids in your 40s.
Very hard for her to get back into the workforce.
And when she gets back into the workforce, she's behind in the race.
So now she's
if you join the New York City Marathon halfway through, you're not going to finish with everybody else, no matter how fucking fast
And just clarifying, behind at the race means like when she was 20, she would be in this beginner position. I forget what that's called, like early entry position.
Right.
At 40, she should be like a VP or something.
So,
because she hasn't worked for 2 decades, she has to go back at that beginning
So
position.
in the law, we call that diminished lifetime earning capacity.
And because it's a beginning position, the earning potential is very small.
Is lower, and it'll never catch up. Because by the time she reaches the age she would have been at 40, she's 60. So she's closer to retirement. So it's lost. So what you're doing is you're sort of saying, okay, we're going to compensate for that. That's the argument for it.
Now, I actually think that there's a lot of compassion, empathy in that idea. Sure. I like that's the best steelman I've heard for it. It makes a lot of sense. Here's the question.
I don't think most people would disagree with
that. No. Here's the other question I have. There are certain circumstances where there is a divorce, there's a payment and splitting of assets to the tune of like tens of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And on top of that, an alimony payment.
Yeah.
Isn't there a way where it could be calculated that the assets themselves would assume that alimony payment?
So what's really interesting is
that a fair...
Without realizing it, you've actually just joined the legislative committee of the New York State Bar Association, because a few years ago, the domestic relations law was actually modified to reflect exactly that.
Okay, I think
where they said what they call it is the income creating capacity of assets received in equitable distribution. And now it is one of the factors. When I started my career 25 years ago, that wasn't a factor. And then a lot of lawyers, myself included, were like, wait, she's getting $20 million.
Why does she also
put it in treasuries at 5%?
Done.
She's got an income stream. So the courts and the legislature caught up, and now they say, if you're getting, like I just did a divorce where there was an $800 million marital estate.
Wow.
Jesus.
She actually had the audacity to ask for alimony. And the judge looked at it and went, listen, you're getting $400 million worth of assets. You're going to be all right. You know, like we're not, that can kick off income if you want it to.
So okay, I'm glad that they're making these adjustments. And I think a lot of times you have to put in this legislation because you have to protect women, especially at a time where like they weren't able to work.
Yes.
Like a lot of these laws, I imagine, are put in times where like women aren't even part of the workforce.
That's when a lot of them came about, and and then the law is very slow to change because the way that our law works is it's sort of a living thing that modifies as times and standards change.
As it should, but there is bureaucracy you have to go through, and that's always going to be
right. And by the way, to bring it back to where we started here, that's why I'm a fan of prenups.
Yes.
Because if you're a fair person and your soon-to-be spouse is a fair person, couldn't you have this conversation?
So this is really interesting. And just to caveat it, like, we all understand the emotional reaction to a prenup and this idea of like the impending doom of your marriage before it even starts. So we get that. But it is interesting to attack the prenup, maybe attack is the wrong word, but approach the prenup with this idea that current legislation might not reflect what both parties feel is fair in a relationship, no matter how it goes. And you can, if you love some of the current legislation, put that into the prenup.
Sure.
If you don't, you 100%. Can remove it. So I think that's an interesting argument for it.
That's to me the best argument for it, because here's the other problem. Is there another contract that you've ever heard of that they can change the terms of the contract without even fucking telling you?
That's interesting.
Like, imagine if you bought or leased a car.
Yeah, this is really interesting.
And they said, oh, by the way, the state just decided we're going to change how the interest rate works and when you have to make the payments. And you're not allowed to go, oh, well, then I'd like to opt out and return the car. And they go, oh, no, you can't do that. Sorry. Like, so there's rules. There's a prenup that was written for all three of your marriages.
By the government.
That can be changed unilaterally by people other than you and your wife and affect you forever. So to me, my attitude is, listen, you could do a prenup one way and then 3 years later do an addendum and modify it. Like, you can make it a living document, just like you make your will. You make your will at one point, you make it again 5 years later, you change it frequently.
I think the perception of it is a person with a lot of assets trying to make sure that the person that they're going to spend the rest of their life with never gets those assets in the event that the marriage doesn't work out, which is the goal of a lot of prenups.
And by the way, not an unfair concept.
Like,
let's
you're bringing 100 million.
Let's go to an alternate reality.
Actually, wait a minute, I got to pee real quick, because the next thing I do want to talk to you about is like, I think we're getting there. Like, what happens with these like huge estates, these people that have like generational wealth? Anyway, can we take like 2 minutes?